She wasn't supposed to be there. At least that's what they thought. To them, she was just the daughter of a janitor, someone invisible, someone beneath notice. The engineers laughed, whispered, and smirked when she walked into the room, daring to stand where she didn't belong. But what they didn't know was that the very problem they'd been struggling with for years was about to be solved by the person they mocked the most. For a decade, a machine sat in silence, labeled broken, beyond repair, an unsolvable puzzle. These men, with their degrees and their pride, had declared it impossible. Yet on this day, the one they ridiculed was about to challenge everything they believed about skill, about worth, and about who truly holds knowledge. How could the daughter of a janitor succeed where trained engineers failed? And what happened next would leave every single one of them stunned. She grew up in the shadows of the workshop, while her father swept floors and emptied trash bins. She lingered at the edges, her wide eyes fixed on the machines the engineers dismissed her from. The men wore pressed shirts and heavy titles, speaking a language of blueprints and calculations, but she understood something they didn't: curiosity, patience, the quiet observation of someone who wasn't supposed to be watching. Most days, she blended in, ignored as just the janitor's kid. She carried her books, kept her head down, and listened. But in secret, she studied the machines that filled the room like sleeping giants. She traced their outlines with her eyes, memorized the hum of gears, and wondered why one engine, massive, silent, gathering dust, stood untouched. The engineers called it dead, shaking their heads as if it were a lost cause. To her, it was different. It was a mystery begging to be solved. But that didn't mean the world was ready to hear her voice. In the cafeteria, in the hallways, even in the workshop, the same whispers followed her. She doesn't belong here. What could she possibly know? Their laughter stung, but it also fueled her fire. Her father reminded her often, "Keep working hard, keep learning, don't give them a reason to doubt you." Yet deep down, she already knew, no matter how much she proved herself, the color of her skin and the job title of her father would always speak louder than her abilities. And so, day after day, she stayed silent, watching, learning, waiting. Because one day, she knew, life would hand her a chance to show what she was truly capable of. What she didn't realize was that this chance was coming sooner than anyone expected. And when it did, the very people who mocked her would have no choice but to watch her step into the light. The day it began felt ordinary. The engineers gathered around the silent machine once again, shaking their heads and trading theories, each more dismissive than the last. 10 years had passed since anyone had dared to touch it. They called it a monument to failure, a reminder that even experts had limits. She stood in the background, broom in hand, invisible. That was her place, unnoticed, unheard, forgotten. But as she listened, she realized they weren't just laughing at the broken engine. They were laughing at her. "Careful, don't let the janitor's daughter get too close," one voice jeered. Another added, "Maybe she can clean it back." "To life!" The room erupted in laughter. Their words stung deeper than they could ever know. She wasn't just being mocked for being curious. She was being mocked for existing in a space they believed wasn't hers. Her father clenched his jaw, pretending not to hear, but she saw the pain in his eyes. He had spent his life working twice, as hard for half the respect, and now they aimed their ridicule at his child. Still, she didn't look away from the engine. Something about it called to her, like an unfinished sentence begging for completion. While the engineers argued over charts and equations, she noticed details they ignored: tiny scratches, subtle misalignments, faint stains of oil where none should have been. To her, it wasn't a pile of useless steel. It was a puzzle, waiting for someone brave enough to try. Days turned into weeks. She stayed late, sweeping slower, stretching out her chores so she could study the machine in silence. Every bolt, every wire, every gear became a part of her memory. She read books her father smuggled from the library, poring over diagrams until her eyes ached. Knowledge became her weapon, though no one believed she had the right to wield it. But the cruelty never stopped. In the cafeteria, they laughed when she carried a book instead of a mop. In the hallways, they whispered loud enough for her to hear. Who does she think she is? She'll never be more than her father's shadow. Each insult pressed down on her, but instead of breaking, it sharpened her resolve. If they wanted her invisible, she would force them to see her. If they wanted her silent, she would make them hear her in the loudest way possible. And then her chance came. One afternoon, a senior engineer announced a challenge. He spoke with arrogance, a smirk playing at his lips. Anyone who thinks they can revive this thing, be my guest. 10 years of failure say otherwise. His eyes drifted toward her, mocking, daring her to step forward. The others laughed, certain she wouldn't. But something inside her shifted. She could stay in the shadows forever, or she could risk everything to prove them wrong. Slowly, she set down her broom. The laughter grew louder, sharper, almost daring her to retreat. Her father whispered urgently, "Don't. It's not worth it." But she shook her head. This wasn't just about an engine. It was about dignity. It was about proving that her worth wasn't defined by the color of her skin or the title of her father's job. She walked toward the silent giant, every step echoing in the workshop. The engineers sneered, some rolling their eyes, others whispering bets on how quickly she'd fail. Her heart pounded, her palms trembled, but her mind was sharp, steady. She had been preparing for this moment far longer than any of them realized. She placed her hands on the cold metal. The room fell into mocking silence. One voice called out, dripping with sarcasm, "Go on then, janitor's girl. Show us what you've got." And in that moment, she knew there was no turning back. The next few minutes would either humiliate her forever or change everything. Her fingers trembled as they traced the machine's surface, not from fear of failure, but from the weight of the stairs boring into her. Every eye in the room, mocking, skeptical, dismissive, watched as if waiting for her collapse. To them, she wasn't a girl with knowledge. She was a symbol of everything they believed didn't belong. "Careful," one of the engineers sneered. "Don't break a nail." Laughter rippled through the group. She ignored them. Her hands moved with quiet certainty, loosening bolts, adjusting levers, feeling for the places she had memorized in her late-night studies. What they saw as fumbling was, in truth, precision. She knew this engine better than anyone else in the room. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat slid down her temple. Her father stood at the back, his jaw clenched, torn between fear and pride. He had endured humiliation all his life, but watching his daughter endure it cut deeper than any insult ever thrown at him. Then came the moment that silenced even the loudest whispers. She pressed a final switch, and for the first time in 10 years, the machine groaned. A low rumble vibrated through the floor. The laughter stopped. A spark of life flickered where there had been none. But instead of awe, the room erupted in protest. "It's a fluke!" one shouted. "She got lucky!" another barked. "She must have tampered with it. There's no way she could—" Their disbelief struck harder than their laughter ever had. Even faced with undeniable proof, they couldn't accept that she had done what none of them could. Because to admit it would mean admitting they were wrong, not just about a machine, but about her worth. The engine roared louder, steady and alive, filling the workshop with the sound of her defiance. Her hands shook, not from fear but from triumph. Yet as she turned, searching for a glimmer of acknowledgement, she found only scowls and tightened jaws. It was then she realized the bitter truth. Sometimes, victory doesn't silence prejudice. Sometimes, proving yourself only makes the walls higher. Still, In that deafening moment, she had broken something greater than the machine's silence. She had shattered their illusion of superiority. The men who once mocked her now stood speechless before the daughter of a janitor, forced to witness a truth they could no longer deny. Her father's eyes glistened, pride shining through years of quiet endurance. For the first time, she felt taller than the room itself, not because they accepted her, but because she no longer needed their permission to belong. The engine thundered, drowning out every excuse, every whisper, every insult that had ever been thrown her way. And as the noise filled the air, a single thought burned in her mind. If they refused to see her worth, then the world beyond these walls would. But the question lingered. Would this moment be enough to change how they treated her, or would they try to erase her triumph, the way they had erased so many voices before? The engine's roar eventually faded into a steady hum, but its echo lingered in every corner of the workshop. The impossible had been done, not by the men, with degrees and titles, but by the daughter of a janitor they had mocked and dismissed. For a fleeting moment the air felt heavy, charged with a truth too powerful to ignore. Yet instead of celebration, silence clung to the room. No applause, no congratulations, no acknowledgement of what she had achieved. The engineers exchanged uneasy glances, their pride wounded, their prejudice exposed. Some muttered excuses, others avoided her gaze entirely. And in that silence, she learned something painful but profound. Breaking barriers doesn't always break bigotry. Her father walked to her side, his hand resting on her shoulder. His eyes spoke what no words could: pride, relief, and a quiet sorrow that she had to fight this battle at all. She had proved them wrong, but the scars of their laughter and doubt would remain. In the days that followed, whispers spread about what had happened. Some twisted the story, claiming she had only stumbled onto the solution. Others denied it outright, saying the engine had never truly been broken. That's how racism often works, rewriting the narrative, erasing the triumphs of those it deems unworthy. But the truth couldn't be silenced. She knew what she had done. Her father knew, and anyone who had witnessed it knew, even if they couldn't admit it out loud. More importantly, she carried something with her that no one could take away: the knowledge that she belonged, not because of their approval, but because of her undeniable ability. She had walked into a room where she was told she didn't fit, and she left having proven she was more than enough. And yet, this story isn't just about one girl and one engine. It's about the countless times people of color have been underestimated, ridiculed or dismissed, only to rise above the very obstacles thrown in their path. It's about how racism doesn't just humiliate, it robs society of brilliance, silencing voices that could change the world. Think about it. How many inventions, discoveries, and breakthroughs have been lost because someone's skin color or family background made others believe they weren't capable? How many dreams have been mocked out of existence before they ever had a chance to shine? Her victory in that workshop is a reminder of what happens when those voices refuse to stay silent. When the ignored, the mocked, the underestimated decide to step forward, they reveal not only their own worth, but the lies that prejudice depends on. The engine's revival was more than a technical triumph. It was a declaration. You cannot define me. You cannot erase me. You cannot silence me. And that declaration isn't just hers. It belongs to everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. Everyone who has ever been laughed at, pushed aside, or underestimated because of who they are. So the question is, how many more daughters, sons, fathers, and mothers must endure the sting of mockery before their brilliance is seen for what it truly is? How many more stories like hers must unfold before the world stops measuring worth by prejudice and starts measuring it by potential? Because in the end, her story isn't just about fixing a broken machine. It's about fixing something far greater. The broken way we choose who gets to be seen, who gets to be heard and who gets to be valued. And maybe the real question is this: when the next janitor's daughter steps into the light, will we laugh at her too, or will we finally listen?